When you think of Resident Evil, I bet your mind immediately goes to the creatures. You know, the zombies, the lickers, those massive monstrosities. They're absolutely iconic. But the real horror, the kind that really gets under your skin and stays there, it isn't just what they are, it's what they were. So today, let's dive into the stories behind the screams.
Seriously, think about it. Is it just the jump scare? The number of teeth it has? The creepy way it moves? I mean, sure, all that stuff helps. But what really elevates a monster from just another enemy to a source of genuine, lasting dread?
The answer, every time, is the lore. It's that horrifying backstory, the journey from being a person to becoming a predator. And in the world of Resident Evil, that journey almost always starts with a whole lot of corporate greed, some major scientific arrogance, and usually a single catastrophic mistake. Okay, so this is where it all began. This is ground zero for decades of nightmares. Forget about ancient curses or supernatural magic. The horror we're talking about was born in a laboratory, created by a company, from a virus that was never ever supposed to get out. The T-virus wasn't some accident in a petri dish. It was a product. Guys like Dr. James Marcus got so obsessed with their work that they started forcing people into their bioweapons programs. I mean, Marcus's own notes list at least 20 people as test subjects in just one facility. These weren't volunteers, they were unwilling sacrifices for the sake of creating a weapon.
Now, Umbrella called them zombies, kind of nodding to Haitian folklore, but what they made was fundamentally different. A mythical zombie is a reanimated corpse, right? A slave brought back by magic. But an Umbrella zombie, that's a victim. It's a person whose body has been hijacked by a virus, turning them into a walking biological weapon. It's science, not sorcery. And honestly, that's what makes it so much more terrifying.
And this is where Umbrella's whole plan really started to spiral out of control. They couldn't even control their own creation. The T-virus was wild, unpredictable. See, under the right conditions, like, say, a zombie consuming a whole lot of biomass, it could trigger this secondary metamorphosis. It would literally shed its skin. Its skeleton would warp and force it down onto all fours, and it would become this. An agile, blind hunter with its brain exposed and a killer instinct. The licker was the first real sign that this wasn't just a zombie plague. It was an evolutionary nightmare. But here's the thing. While the licker was a horrifying accident, the tyrant was the goal all along. This was the end game for the T-virus project, a mass-produced, programmable super soldier. Creatures like the infamous T-100, you know him as Mr. X, they weren't just monsters. They were weapons deployed with a specific mission. They were built to be intelligent, relentless, and basically unstoppable. The Tyrant is the moment Umbrella's horrifying vision was finally made real.
But the terror didn't stop with a virus. Of course not. It evolved. The next stage of bioterror became so much more sinister. It grew from a mindless infection into something with a will of its own, something ancient, intelligent, and just utterly evil.
So meet Las Plagas. These aren't viruses that just reanimate dead tissue. No, these are living organisms that take over a living host. They were unearthed by a cult, the Los Illuminados, and the Plaga parasite literally burrows into its host's nervous system. It doesn't want to just make a monster, it wants to make a soldier for its collective hive mind.
And that right there is the key difference. T-virus zombies are a horde, you know? A mindless force of nature. But the Ganados, the victims of Las Plagas, they're an army. They can use tools, they can set traps, they can communicate with each other, they work together, all under the direction of a dominant plaga. The threat evolved from pure, simple chaos to coordinated, intelligent evil.
For me, this is where a whole new level of fear comes in, something deeply psychological. See, victims of the plaga are trapped inside their own bodies. They're aware of what's happening, but they're completely powerless to stop it. They become puppets, forced to watch as their own hands are used to attack their neighbors, their friends, anyone who gets in the cult's way. It is the ultimate violation of free will.
The conversion process itself is just this slow, agonizing descent into hell. Accounts from survivors describe these horrifying stages. First, you get these violent seizures as the parasite takes over and rewires your brain. Then, a burning sensation, like your blood is literally boiling. That's followed by a complete emotional shutdown. Parents would watch their own children die and feel absolutely nothing. And then, finally, the last little trace of who you were is just gone, replaced by a hollow shell that lives only to serve the cult.
But you know, of all the monsters in this entire universe, from viral zombies to parasitic puppets, the ones that are truly the most disturbing are the ones whose stories we know.
The ones who had names and families and lives before they were twisted into something you can't even recognize.
And there is no story more tragic, more fundamentally messed up than that of Lisa Trevor. She wasn't a soldier or a cultist, she was just a little girl. She and her mother were kidnapped back in the 1960s to be the very first human test subjects for the progenitor virus, which was the precursor to the T-virus.
Just look at this timeline. This ordeal lasted for 28 years. For nearly 3 decades, Lisa was Umbrella's prisoner. Her body was pumped full of countless viral strains. At one point, in 1988, they even put a parasite in her, just to watch her immune system destroy it. Her mind completely broke down, until all she wanted was her mother, who, by the way, had been executed just days after they were captured. This led to her horrific obsession with collecting the faces of female researchers, because she believed one of them had stolen her mother's. Her story is the secret bleeding heart of Umbrella's evil.
Now let's jump forward a few decades to a totally different kind of horror. The Bakers weren't evil scientists. They were just a family living out in the Louisiana bayou. Their big mistake? They found a shipwreck and tried to rescue a little girl named Eveline. But Eveline wasn't a little girl. She was a bioweapon, and her gift of infection corrupted them, turning their minds and their bodies into extensions of her own twisted will.
This one line from the patriarch Jack Baker, it just perfectly captures their new purpose. See, Eveline's infection didn't just make them monsters, it gave them a new, twisted obsession: family. They were compelled to capture anyone who wandered onto their property and force them to become part of their grotesque, violent family unit. So, under Eveline's control, the Baker household became this nightmare stage play of domestic life. Their home, which should be a symbol of safety, turned into a slaughterhouse. Marguerite would serve these meals made from human remains, yelling at her victims to eat up. Lucas, their son, would build these deadly escape rooms for his guests, a cruel game born from his corrupted mind. And Jack would just relentlessly, even joyfully, hunt down anyone who refused to join their version of a family. They were still a family unit, but love had been totally replaced by a violent, all-consuming infection.
So, from a virus that creates mindless rage, to a parasite that creates a mindless army, to a mold that creates a mindless family, the evolution of horror in Resident Evil really is the story of humanity being systematically stripped away piece by piece.
For over a quarter of a century, this franchise has been exploring the consequences of this one terrifying idea. The science gets more advanced, the monsters get more complex, but that core theme always stays the same. The true terror isn't the monster itself, but the person that it used to be. Ultimately, every single creature we've looked at is an answer to this question. The price is paid by the test subjects in some forgotten lab, by the villagers in an isolated community, and by the families who are just trying to do the right thing. It's a legacy written in blood, mutation, and the screams of those who lost absolutely everything.